Zuri Okoro lived between two worlds, the fluorescent buzz of a late-night diner and the suffocating pressure of medical textbooks. At 23, she juggled greasy plates and impossible anatomy exams, her only compass pointing toward a future where she wore scrubs instead of a stained apron. But everything changed the night she discovered a wallet stuffed with more cash than she'd seen in her entire life. The owner, Park Min-ho, a man whose very name commanded silence in the city's darkest corners. What Zuri couldn't have known as she reached for that sticky diner telephone was that finding the wallet wasn't an accident. It was a carefully orchestrated trial, and returning it wouldn't earn her gratitude. It would earn her a place in a world where loyalty was bought with blood and silence was the only currency that mattered. Zuri Okoro was surviving, not thriving. She moved through her days with mechanical precision, 8-hour shifts at Ruby's Diner downtown, then straight to City College for pre-med courses that devoured whatever energy remained. Her dark skin glowed under the harsh diner lights, her hair pulled back in tight braids that framed her angular face. She had her mother's quick smile and her father's stubborn determination, both of which she needed desperately as she climbed toward a dream that felt impossibly distant. A medical degree, financial security, a life where she could save people instead of serving them pancakes at 3 a.m. The rent was always late. The textbooks were always expensive. But Zuri never complained, never wavered. She just kept moving forward one exhausting step at a time. It was nearly 2 a.m. when she noticed him. The diner had emptied except for one man in the corner booth, a figure who seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that looked criminally out of place among the cracked vinyl seats and faded linoleum. His face was all sharp angles and controlled intensity, his dark eyes tracking every movement in the room with predatory awareness. He'd ordered nothing but sparkling water, left it untouched for half an hour, then paid with a crisp $100 bill before disappearing into the night without a single word. When Zuri went to clear his table, her hand brushed against something wedged deep in the booth. Wallet. But not just any wallet. This was crafted from buttersoft leather the color of midnight, heavy and substantial in a way that screamed wealth and power. Her pulse quickened as she slid into the seat and carefully opened it. Inside, she found 2 thick stacks of $100 bills, perfectly aligned and held together by an engraved silver clip. Next to the cash sat a single identification card with a name that made her breath catch. Park Min-ho. The photo showed the man from the booth, his expression hard and unreadable. The address listed a neighborhood Zuri had only seen in magazine spreads, the kind of place where security gates and private guards kept ordinary people at a respectful distance. There was also a strange metal card bearing Korean characters she didn't recognize, no bank name or logo, just the embossed symbol of something exclusive and probably dangerous. She counted the money quickly. $4,000. Enough to pay tuition for an entire year. Enough to stop living on ramen and borrowed textbooks. Enough to finally breathe. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head, words hammered into her since childhood in their cramped Lagos apartment. Sleep comes easy when your hands are clean, my daughter. Stolen bread tastes like poison. Those words had followed her across an ocean, through every hardship, every temptation. They were her anchor. Zuri closed the wallet with shaking hands. She had to return it. But something about the sheer amount of cash, about the man's cold demeanor, told her this wasn't a simple mistake. Felt intentional, calculated, like a trap designed to catch someone like her. Tucked into one of the card slots, she found a plain business card. No logo, no title. Just a name written in elegant Korean script and a phone number. She walked behind the counter, her palms sweating as she picked up the diner's ancient phone. It was 2:20 in the morning. She dialed. The phone was answered before the first ring finished. A male voice, harsh and suspicious, barked a single word. Speak. Zuri forced steadiness into her voice. Hello. My name is Zuri Okoro. I work at Ruby's Diner on 5th Street. Someone left a wallet here tonight. The ID says Park Min-ho. Silence stretched across the line, heavy and suffocating. It felt less like a pause and more like an interrogation, as if the person on the other end was dissecting her, measuring her worth based solely on her accent and the location she'd given. Finally he spoke. Wait. A moment later, a different voice came through, deeper and infinitely more dangerous. The voice carried a refined Korean accent, smooth and controlled, the kind of voice that didn't ask twice. This is Park Min-ho. You found my property. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Yes, sir, Zuri confirmed, her heart hammering against her ribs. You left it in the corner booth. It has your identification and quite a bit of cash. I wanted to call so I could get it back to you safely. You could have kept it. His tone was utterly neutral, clinical even. The amount inside would change your life considerably. I'm aware of your circumstances, Miss Okoro. The late shifts, the tuition debt, the struggle. The casual invasion of her privacy sent ice through her veins, but Zuri kept her voice level. It's yours, sir. My circumstances don't change what's right. I can hold it here until you're able to retrieve it, or I can bring it to you if you prefer. You will do neither. The authority in his voice cut through the line like a blade. You will remain exactly where you are. You will not leave that wallet unattended. Do you understand me? I understand. A car will arrive in 12 minutes. You will hand the wallet directly to the driver. You will not attempt conversation beyond what is necessary for confirmation. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice dropped to something darker, more threatening. And Miss Okoro, you did not open the wallet. Confirm this. Zuri hesitated for a fraction of a second. She knew what he was doing, testing her, searching for lies. She made a split-second decision to protect herself. That's correct, sir. I found it and called immediately. It hasn't been opened. Good. Your honesty, or your lack of it, will be evaluated accordingly. Wait there. The line went dead. Zuri replaced the receiver, her hand trembling. She just lied to a man who clearly operated far outside the boundaries of normal society. The wallet on the counter no longer felt like a lost item. Felt like a loaded weapon. She locked the cash register, secured the front door, and sat on a stool near the window, watching the empty street. The orange glow of streetlights cast long shadows across the checkerboard floor. She'd done the right thing by calling him. She knew that. But something deep in her gut whispered that by choosing integrity, she just signed a contract written in invisible ink, and the terms would come due whether she was ready or not. 12 minutes later, a vehicle pulled up outside. A black Escalade with windows so dark they looked like solid obsidian. It idled at the curb, massive and imposing, a mechanical predator waiting patiently for its prey. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in an expensive black peacoat that didn't quite hide the bulk beneath. His face was impassive, his movements efficient and practiced. He wasn't Park Min-ho, but he carried the same aura of controlled violence, the same sense that he could dismantle a threat before it even materialized. He pushed through the diner door, the bell above chiming softly. His eyes found her immediately. Zuri Okoro. Yes, she said, standing quickly. She slid the wallet across the counter toward him. He didn't pick it up right away. Instead, he subjected her to a thorough, invasive appraisal, his gaze cataloging every detail. Her worn uniform, her tired eyes, the tension in her shoulders. He was searching for tells, for signs of deception, for any indication that she'd tampered with the contents or planned to cause trouble. Finally, he reached out and picked up the wallet. He didn't open it. He simply weighed it in his palm, tapped it twice with his index finger as if confirming something only he understood, then slipped it into his coat. Mr. Park appreciates your prompt action, he said, his voice flat and professional. He reached into another pocket and placed a thick manila envelope on the counter. His gratitude. I don't want payment, Zuri said quickly, putting her hands up. Seriously, I was just doing what anyone should do. It's not necessary. The directive is non-negotiable. His tone hardened, brooking no argument. Accept it. This closes the matter. He gave a curt nod, turned, and walked out without another word. The Escalade pulled away seconds later, disappearing into the night as silently as it had arrived. Zuri stared at the envelope. It was heavier than it should be. With trembling fingers, she opened it. $5,000 in sequential bills, crisp and new. More money than she could earn in 4 months of soul-crushing work. But there was also a note, written on expensive cream-colored cardstock in elegant, deliberate handwriting. Miss Okoro, an intriguing decision. You chose principle over profit in a world that rarely rewards such choices. Your name is now associated with a quality I require. Do not spend these funds immediately. Do not discuss this matter with anyone. You have passed the initial assessment. Wait for contact. Park Min-ho. Zuri sank onto the stool, the note slipping from her fingers. Initial assessment. The words burned into her mind. She hadn't just returned a wallet. She'd been observed, evaluated, catalogued. This man, this Park Min-ho, wasn't just wealthy. He was something far more dangerous. And somehow, by doing the right thing, she'd caught his attention in a way that felt less like recognition and more like ownership. The money wasn't a reward. It was the first link in a chain she couldn't yet see. The next 3 weeks passed in a haze of paranoia. Zuri felt eyes on her constantly, even when she was alone. She stopped taking her usual route home, started checking over her shoulder compulsively, jumped at every unexpected sound. She told no one about the money, hiding it in a locked box beneath a loose floorboard in her tiny apartment. It felt radioactive, too dangerous to touch, too significant to ignore. She threw herself into her studies with manic intensity, trying to outrun the dread that followed her like a shadow. Anatomy, pharmacology, pathophysiology. She memorized until her eyes burned and her head throbbed, desperate to lose herself in the clean, logical world of medicine. But she couldn't escape Park Min-ho. He was there in every quiet moment, every silent street, every unexpected phone call. She was waiting for something, though she didn't know what. The contact came when she least expected it. Zuri was studying in the university library's quiet section, buried under a mountain of biochemistry notes. It was nearly midnight, the building almost empty except for a few other desperate students hunched over their laptops. She was so focused on metabolic pathways that she didn't notice him until he was standing right there, 10 feet away, watching her. Park Min-ho. He wore a long black coat over dark clothes, his hair perfectly styled, his expression unreadable. He looked like he'd stepped out of a different reality, one where power and danger were worn as casually as expensive fabric. Her breath caught. He didn't smile, didn't acknowledge her surprise. He simply inclined his head slightly toward a secluded study room in the corner. Zuri's hands shook as she gathered her books. She followed him, her pulse racing, her mind spinning with fear and confusion. Inside the study room, he closed the door softly behind them. The space felt impossibly small with him in it, his presence overwhelming. "Mr. Park," she whispered, her voice tight. "What are you doing here?" "Confirming my assessment," he said quietly. "You've told no one. You haven't spent the money. You've maintained silence." His knowledge of her behavior was terrifying in its precision. He knew. He'd been watching. "That night," he continued, his voice low and measured, "the wallet contained operational funds and highly sensitive access codes. Leaving it was deliberate. Field test. I needed to identify someone in that area who could be trusted, someone who would act on principle rather than opportunity. You were the only one who passed, Miss Okoro. Not through greed, but through integrity." He reached into his coat and pulled out a specialized phone, sleek and encrypted, nothing like the smartphones everyone else carried. He placed it on the table between them. "I need someone who exists outside my existing network. Someone clean, untraceable, and capable. Someone like you. Your goal is to become a doctor. I will fund everything. Medical school, residency, living expenses. No debt. Ever. You will graduate as a physician, completely secure." Zuri stared at the phone, then back at him. It was her dream, handed to her on a silver platter by a man who radiated danger like heat from a fire. "What's the cost?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Something flickered in his eyes. "Approval, maybe. Respect. Simple. Absolute loyalty and complete silence. You will be my medical resource. I have associates, Powerful men who cannot risk public hospitals or official records. They require discreet medical care. You will go where I send you. You will treat injuries, stabilize patients, and ask no questions. You will see nothing, remember nothing, report nothing. Your professionalism must be absolute. Your curiosity non-existent. He leaned forward slightly, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive. If you refuse, you continue as you are, struggling but safe. If you accept, you step into your future, fully funded. But you belong to me. And if you ever speak about what you see, if you ever betray this arrangement, I will ensure both your safety and your future are permanently erased. Choose now, Zuri. It wasn't really a choice. It was an ultimatum wrapped in opportunity, a devil's bargain that promised everything she wanted at a price she couldn't fully calculate. She looked at the phone. She thought of the exhaustion, the debt, the endless grind. She thought of her grandmother's voice telling her to walk the right path. But which path was right? The one where she struggled in poverty for years, or the one where she compromised to save lives? She reached out and picked up the phone. It was cold and heavy in her palm. I accept, she said clearly. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. The funds are already in a secure account. Begin your enrollment process immediately. Leave the diner. And call me Minho Zuri. We're partners now. The intimacy of his name on his lips felt like a brand, marking her as his. He stood, the coat swirling around him, and walked out of the study room without another word, leaving her alone with a phone that hadn't rung yet and a future that suddenly felt both brilliant and terrifying. Zuri quit Ruby's diner the next morning. Her manager looked at her like she'd lost her mind when she handed in her notice, unable to comprehend how a broke student could suddenly afford to walk away. She told him she'd received a scholarship, kept her answers vague, and felt a strange mix of relief and dread as she walked out for the last time. She used the account Minho had set up, paid tuition in full, bought new textbooks, moved into a better apartment closer to campus, a place with actual heat and windows that didn't rattle in the wind. Her life transformed overnight, her dreams suddenly within reach, all thanks to a man she feared more than she trusted. She buried herself in her studies, trying to convince herself that the arrangement was harmless, that she'd just accepted patronage from an eccentric benefactor. She tried to forget about Park Min-ho, to focus only on the science, the memorization, the clean predictability of human biology. The encrypted phone sat on her nightstand like a coiled snake. She never turned it off, never gave the number to anyone, checked it obsessively to make sure the battery was charged. 5 months passed. Long, intense months filled with exams and clinical rotations and late-night study sessions. The fear of Minho faded into background noise, a low hum of anxiety she learned to live with. Maybe, she thought desperately, he'd forgotten about her. Maybe the deal had been a one-time transaction. Then, in the middle of an all-night study session before finals, the phone rang. It was 4:15 in the morning. The ringtone was sharp and jarring, a sound designed to wake the dead. Zuri's eyes snapped open, her heart lurching. She grabbed the phone. Zuri! Minho's voice was tight, strained, urgent in a way she'd never heard before. This wasn't the smooth, controlled man from the library. This was someone in crisis. A car will be there in 7 minutes. Put on scrubs. Bring nothing. Do not speak to the driver. The patient is critical. Do not fail me. The line went dead. Zuri scrambled out of bed, yanking on the clean scrubs she kept ready out of instinct. Her hands shook as she tied her hair back, her mind already shifting into emergency mode. 7 minutes later, the black Escalade was idling outside her building. The driver was different this time, silent and focused. He didn't speak as she climbed into the back seat, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. They drove for nearly an hour, leaving the city behind, winding through dark rural roads until they reached a massive estate hidden behind high walls and sophisticated security. The Escalade pulled into an underground garage. Zuri was led through pristine hallways, marble and steel and wealth beyond comprehension, until they reached a wing that had been converted into a private medical facility. A fully equipped operating room, sterile and gleaming, tucked inside a mansion designed for secrets. Minho was there, dressed in tactical black, his face pale and drawn. He stood over a gurney where an elderly Korean man lay unconscious, his breathing shallow, his chest soaked with dark blood. "Stabbing," Minho said without preamble, his voice hoarse. "Blade to the sternum. He's losing too much blood. I can't take him to a hospital. He's my most trusted advisor, Zuri. The man who built everything I have. Save him." The raw desperation in his voice cut through her fear. Zuri stepped forward, her training taking over. Her mind clicking into the calm, focused state she'd practiced 1,000 times in simulations. She was no longer a student or a frightened girl. She was a medical professional in an emergency. "I need light directly over the wound," she said sharply. "Sterile water, sutures, a chest tube kit. For fluids immediately." "Where's the trauma kit?" Minho pointed to a cart nearby, relief flashing across his face. "Everything's ready. Tell me what to do." Zuri pulled on sterile gloves and got to work. The wound was horrific, jagged and deep, dangerously close to vital structures. She worked methodically, exploring the laceration, debriding damaged tissue, checking for arterial involvement, closing the layers with precise stitching. She worked for over 2 hours. Minho stood beside her the entire time, silent and steady, following her terse instructions without question. He handed her instruments, managed the 4, monitored the patient's vitals. The powerful enforcer reduced to an assistant, taking orders from a woman half his size. When she finally tied off the last suture and secured the dressing, she looked up at him. "He's stable. The bleeding is controlled. He needs a transfusion, but we can't risk it here. The 4 fluids will maintain his pressure for now. The biggest risk is infection. He needs continuous antibiotics and monitoring for at least 48 hours. He cannot be moved." Minho exhaled slowly, closing his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, he looked at her with something she'd never seen before. Raw gratitude. Profound relief. "You're extraordinary," he said quietly. "You didn't hesitate. You were flawless. You saved him." He stepped closer and this time he reached out. His hand closed gently around her forearm, warm and solid and human. "I underestimated the depth of your talent. Thank you." The simple touch after the intensity of the trauma felt shockingly intimate. It was the touch of a man whose world had nearly collapsed, and she'd been the one to hold it together. "The driver will take you to a guest suite upstairs," he said, still holding her arm. "You won't be going home yet. You'll check on him every 4 hours. I'll handle your schoolwork. Don't leave the estate." He released her, but his gaze held hers, intense and searching. "That man shaped me into who I am. You've done more than fulfill our agreement, Zuri. You've earned something I rarely give. My debt. And I always repay my debts." Zuri nodded, too exhausted to speak, understanding that a debt from a man like Park Min-ho was more binding than any contract, more dangerous than any threat. She'd passed the ultimate test. And the passing grade had bound her to a destiny she was only beginning to understand, a future shaped by silence, skill, and the strange electric connection that sparked every time the enforcer looked at her. Her transformation from waitress to the mafia boss's indispensable private physician was complete. If you enjoyed this thrilling story of loyalty, danger, and unexpected romance, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another captivating tale. Drop a comment below telling us what you thought about Zuri and Minho's intense first encounter. And check out our playlist for more incredible stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat.